Welcome, beautiful Paris Saint-Germain family. We're set to discuss the Super League because they are pushing. They have been pushing. They're not dead. They've been pushing and pushing. And we finally have some breaking updated news on the Super League, potentially trying to come back into football. And this is a big report right here. New. The Super League have made the final offer to UEFA for a new Champions League format. So what we can take away from this early first title right here is that the Super League is talking with UEFA to replace it, which makes absolutely zero sense. Because why would UEFA want to be replaced? But that's the thing for me this entire time. I've never felt UEFA and the Super League are against each other. I think they're going, for the same thing. But they're different entities. Obviously, UEFA's UEFA. And the Super League, I think it's by some rich Jewish Western bank that's pushing for the Super League and so on. And what obviously we saw was, the big clubs in the Champions League, I think they maybe only received like 30-40% of the total revenue from UEFA, with UEFA eating up a lot of that. Whilst the Super League would give way higher percentages to the clubs, which is the main reason the clubs would want to create a Super League, because of more money. The clubs that were mostly pushing for the Super League were the Serie A clubs, the Italian clubs, and the Spanish clubs. Those are the clubs mostly in an economical deficit and were mostly negatively impacted by COVID. And that's why they've been pushing for the UEFA Champions League. But as I've said, it's always the same people sitting at the top, all right? Whether it's UEFA or whether it's the bankers that want the Super League. But all of them, I think, are sitting at the same table. Why the Super League didn't happen last time? Was it because of UEFA? Yes, UEFA pushed against it and everything. But the reason it didn't happen was the fans. The football fans, when the Super League first came out, they were like, no, this is against it. This is changing football, not too much. It's going to ruin this, ruin that, everything. Let's not have it. As talks have had secretly over the last 8 months between UEFA, the Super League, Barca and Madrid. So they've had secret talks for 8 months. Why would UEFA have secret talks with the Super League when it's supposed enemy that wants to replace it? It makes absolutely zero sense. But as you can see, Barca and Madrid, they are, I think, the only two clubs potentially with Atletico Madrid that are still in the Super League thingy, because all the other clubs left. Starting from 2027. 36 teams split into 2 groups. And what does this remind us of? The NBA, the MLS, all of that. Because what is the Super League? The Super League is trying to Americanize football, which is, if you look at the NBA and everything, it's maximizing the profit. So those clubs make so much money, they generate so much revenue. I think if you look at, if we search, for example, top 10 most valuable sport teams, maybe that. There you go. Real Madrid, number 1 when it comes to football. And they're all the way down in 12th place. Last year you got American football, baseball. And think about it. These sports are nowhere as famous as football. Way many more people watch football than baseball, than American football, than basketball. Which, I think the high elites, when they look at this, they say, you have such a big, audience. You have such a big audience, but you're not generating nowhere close to the money. Like Dallas Cowboys, how many people do you think watches them every single season compared to Real Madrid? Or compared to Barca? You see Barca here, you got Liverpool here, you got City here, you got Bayern, and you got Paris Saint-Germain. That's it. In the top 50. And you can see all the other nations competing. It's America. It's all America. And this is why the Super League is coming, because these football clubs have understood we need to generate more money. Because as a football institution, as a company, you always want to make profits. You never want to be this, and especially not going down. And to maximize profit, they have preseason in America, they have preseason in Japan to build more, to get new fans. And then it's about building new stadiums. Madrid renovating their new stadium, Barca doing that, Paris Saint-Germain want to build a new stadium, United's going to build a new stadium, Spurs obviously built a new stadium, Chelsea definitely thinking about building a new stadium. Why? To generate more money. That's what it's all about. And that's why they're going to the Americans, because as you can see, the Americans are absolutely dominating when it comes to the revenue, even though they have a much less audience in a much lesser known sport. Top 18 face each other. 8 high-level games each. Top 18 face each other. Okay, so splits into 2 of 18. They face each other 8 high-level games each. Teams ranked 19 to 36th play separately more balanced games. Knockout phase still decided by points and rankings. All matches broadcast on new streaming platform for free with ads. And with paid promotion subscription ad-free. Competition keeps the Champions League name. That is very interesting. Obviously, this comes from Mundo Deportivo, which is not the most reliable source out there, but all of this definitely makes sense. So Super League, instead of creating the Super League, they want to make the Champions League into the Super League. What a surprise. Because when we look at Champions League new format, if we look at the new Champions League format, it's the Super League. And that's what I've always been saying about the new format. It's preparing the football world for the Super League. Because this is the group that we have now, and it will basically be the same, just with 2 groups instead of 1. And the winner of the competition will not be who finishes in first place. You remember Liverpool fans last season celebrating finishing in first place. Well, it don't matter. It's all about who wins the competition. So it's going to be group stage, excitement, all of that. But at the end of the day, it's who wins the actual tournament that wins the Champions League, the Super League, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting that the Champions League is going to become the Super League instead of the Super League being created. So the Champions League is just going to transition. And I think that's why they brought up the Super League, just to get people about the idea, because nobody knew what the Super League was when it came out. But now everybody knows what the Super League is. And with the new Champions League format, how it's become, they're like, yeah, this is just the same thing. And then it's much easier transitioning from the Champions League into the Super League, because at the moment it feels like we're in a middle spot. We're not in the Champions League. We left the old Champions League format, but we're not in the Super League yet. We're somewhere in between. And they are estimating for 2027, which is not that far away. So we'll play this season, we'll play next season, and then starting off from the 2027-2028 season, the Super League would be created. I would not be surprised if this happens. They also talks about all matches being broadcast on new streaming platform. Obviously, this is to make it much easier for football fans to follow football. For example, they did the same with the Zone in the summer. All the Club World Cup games were for free on the Zone in not all locations in the world, but in some locations. So it was like preparation for this. And that's how everything feels like. The new Champions League format, preparation for the Super League. The Zone, the Club World Cup, preparation for the Super League. It all feels prepared for the Super League. And I've always said, I believe the Super League is inevitable, whether you like it or not. So Nasser taking a strong positions against the Super League didn't really matter, because he's part of UEFA, and I've not seen Nasser Al-Khalifi say anything negative against the new Champions League format or about the Champions League potentially becoming the Super League. So it was all a game by these people. But I'm very happy with Nasser Khalifi, because what he did when the Super League happened has to be the biggest boss move. He decided to support UEFA in this situation, whilst Laporta, Perez, all of them got kicked out of the European Association. And Nasser Khalifi now is the president of the European Association. So from a Paris Saint-Germain standpoint, this really does not matter. But it's actually good news, because that means it's not a different entity. It's just the Champions League that's going to transition into the Super League. Yeah, I've said what I think about the football Americanizing. We've already seen it in the Premier League. I think Score 90 put it out. Owners, leagues, if I can find that. Yeah, right here. It's low quality, but you get the picture. Well, more than half of the clubs in the Premier League are owned by American investors. And it's the same thing. Here's the Champions League one. 6 clubs owned by Americans. But I think this is something that's just going to grow and grow and grow. Yeah, exactly. Serie A. Look at Serie A. I didn't even know this until I saw this picture. But as you can see, Serie A, nearly 50% of the clubs owned by Americans. Americans are buying up the sport. And you know, when it's Arabs doing it, even though it's only 2 Arabs owning Premier League clubs, it's this bad thing and sports washing. But when these Zionist Jews, yeah, majority of these owners are Zionist Jews, when they come and buy these clubs, there's absolutely no problem. They are ruining the sport. And I think the best example is looking at the Premier League, where all they focus on is marketing, maximizing profits, but removing fans. The Premier League has no ultras. They have no actual rivalries anymore. So, yeah, I think this is a bad thing for football. But I understand why it's happening, because these clubs want to maximize as much profit and as much money as possible, to generate money and, become bigger and better and all of that. But as a football supporter, this is obviously going in the wrong direction. They're putting profits over us. I'm not a local fan, but I've seen a lot of local fans, be mad that the clubs are targeting new audiences all the time, and casual fans who are going to spend a lot of money, because they rather care about the fan that spends a lot of money than the fan that is really passionate and loves the club and goes to every game. All they care about is money and profit. And that's the way, not just football, but everything in life is going. And yeah, the Super League, I've always said, is inevitable, and it has actually never been closer. That's been it from boy Pierre. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about the Super League coming to football? And as usual, allez, Paris.